We were hunters and foragers. The frontier was everywhere. We were bounded only by the earth and the ocean and the sky. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. For all our failings, despite our limitations and fallibilities, we humans are capable of greatness. How far will our nomadic species have wandered by the end of the next century and the next millennium?
Welcome back to the shores of the cosmic ocean. An immensity of space and time. A vastness still mostly uncharted. We're bound for the possible worlds revealed by science. We'll take a ride on the underground worldwide network that no one knew was there. I'm going to tell you a first contact story that's true. We'll meet some of the most courageous people who ever lived. And we're going to venture into the future we can still have, to the homes of our distant descendants among the stars. Science can carry us across that vastness, but without imagination, we go nowhere. Our ship of the imagination is propelled by twin engines of skepticism and wonder. It's guided by the simple set of rules that define science and make it so powerful. Test ideas by experiment and observation. Build on those ideas that pass the test. Reject the ones that fail. Follow the evidence wherever it leads and question everything. Take these rules to heart and the cosmos is yours. Come with me. Our ship of the imagination can take us anywhere in space and time. The cosmos is right outside our front window. If you want to see the past, look down. And if you want to see the future, look up. On this voyage, we're bound for a distant galaxy. And we'll discover how we, as a species, became explorers of the cosmos. There she is, NASA's Voyager 1. Launched in 1977, she is the most distant object built by human hands. She's done some hard traveling since our last encounter. Logged another 1.5 billion miles. Voyager's making for other parts of our Milky Way. But we have another, far more distant destination. The cosmic ocean is made of space and time. You can't move in space without also moving in time. Our voyage will take us a long way from home, a little more than 1 billion light years. We're also traveling 1 billion years into the past, to an event so violent, it will even shatter time. Now we're getting close to our destination. This is what we came for. These two black holes were born from the collapse of a pair of massive stars. And they've been doing a gravitational tangle ever since, for millions of years. We're here for the climax. When those two collide, they will set off a space-time tsunami that will stretch and compress space in all directions. And it will slow down time itself before speeding it up and slowing it down again. Slow down time itself. They will set off a space-time tsunami. Press space in all directions. Billion light years away. What does an event that took place more than 1 billion light years away have to do with us? Albert Einstein was the first to understand that matter could send ripples across space-time. He imagined that catastrophic explosions of matter should create something much bigger than ripples. Great waves, gravitational waves. You are seeing and hearing me right now on whatever device you have because we figured out a way to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum. If we can learn to surf those gravitational waves the way we know how to ride the electromagnetic ones, who knows? It's as impossible to foresee as our world was to the scientists who experimented with electricity back in the 19th century. Cosmologists predicted the existence of black holes. Gravitational waves are the first direct evidence that black holes are real. But they may also provide a new way of knowing and exploring the cosmos. We can add it to the other senses that science has devised to penetrate the great dark ocean. All the kinds of light we use. Gamma ray, X-ray, ultraviolet, infrared, microwave, radio wave, and visible light. This newest way to search the cosmos could help us to one day know what's happening inside those black holes and the other hidden places that make up most of the universe. What if we could detect the gravitational waves that were caused by the first moment of creation, the birth of the cosmos? What if we could extend our vision to see the whole sweep of 14 billion years of cosmic evolution? So, how did we get so smart? We know something about the evolution of our species, but how did the human mind evolve? Where did that crazy ambition to climb the ladder to the stars come from? How did we become a way for the universe to know itself? It started over there. The cosmic calendar is a way for us to grasp the vastness of time. We've taken all of time from the birth of the universe to this very moment and compressed it into a single calendar year. On this scale, every month represents a little more than 1 billion years. Every day represents nearly 40 million years. Our own story begins with all the other life on our little world. Every living thing on Earth is descended from a single origin. It happened in the deep ocean darkness on September 15th, about 4 billion years ago. Within this tiny single-celled organism was a kind of chemical ladder, the DNA double helix. Star stuff. Oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, elements cooked in the hearts of distant stars combined with hydrogen from the Big Bang to become alive on this little world. Through random changes, mutations in the genes, some of which led to more successful life forms, what we call evolution by natural selection. The ladder grew, adding more and more rungs. It took another 3 billion years for life to evolve the complexity of the plants and animals that you could see with the naked eye. If the cosmic calendar had holidays, surely December 26th would be one of them. Sometime on this day, about 200 million years ago, the first mammals evolved. They brought a new feature to life on Earth, the neocortex. Back in the Triassic, the odds were against her kind. But the dinosaurs that terrorized the mammals went extinct. It was the evolution of the neocortex in small, furtive creatures such as this one that enabled their descendants to take over the planet. Mammals brought something else that was new. They suckled their young. They nurtured them, and there was love. Mother's Day on the cosmic calendar. Evolution by natural selection means that those living things able to better adapt to their environment are more likely to survive and leave offspring. Intelligence can be a huge selective advantage. The fate of this planet was changed forever by an event involving just 13 atoms. How small is 13 atoms? It's a quadrillionth the size of a grain of salt. A mutation occurred in the DNA of just one of our ancestors. Every source of self-esteem, everything we've learned and built, might come down to nothing more than this. One base pair of a single gene, just a single rung, programmed the neocortex to grow larger still and fold more deeply. Maybe it was a random zap from a cosmic ray, or a simple error in transmission from one cell to another. Whatever it was, it led to a change in our species that would ultimately affect every other species of life on Earth. It happened late on New Year's Eve on this cosmic calendar of ours. To think that, for good or evil, our ability to feel loyalty and concern for increasingly larger groups, our obsession with certain belief systems, our capacity to imagine the future, our power to transform the world and to search the cosmos for answers. The very name we gave to our own species, Homo sapiens, Latin for wise persons, all of it comes down to nothing more than a single rung on our tiny DNA ladder to the stars. For much of the last hour on the cosmic calendar, for all but the last minute, Our ancestors were hunters and gatherers, living in small bands. You know, when people just shrug and say, chalk it up to human nature, it puzzles me. They're usually talking about our greed, our arrogance, our violence. But we've been human for at least a couple 100,000 years. For most of that time, we weren't that way at all. How do we know? From the accounts of explorers and anthropologists encountering surviving hunter-gatherer societies across 4 centuries. There are, of course, exceptions, especially in the circumstances of extreme scarcity. But the overwhelming consensus paints a picture of humans who lived in relative harmony with each other and the environment. We shared the little we had because we knew that our survival depended on the group. We didn't prize wealth beyond our needs because possessions would just weigh us down as we wandered. We were different from our non-human primate ancestors, with their alpha males bullying their way to dominance. And where was God? Everywhere. In the rocks and in the rivers, in the trees and the birds and every living thing. That was human nature for a couple of 100,000 years. I'm standing on the southern tip of Africa and imagining what it was like sometime in the last hundreds of thousands of years. Back then, Africa was home to all the world's Homo sapiens, all 10,000 of them. If you were an extraterrestrial on a survey mission, you might have thought we were an endangered species. Someday soon, there will be 10 billion of us. What happened? How did we become the globe-girdling, space-traveling species that we are today? Welcome to the first laboratory on Earth. We're in Blombos Cave, where the evolution of the mind made a great leap. Our ancestors were conducting chemistry experiments here with a mineral rich in iron, ochre. They used it to decorate objects with bits of red color, but it may have also had other uses, to preserve animal hides, or as a medicine, or as a way to sharpen their tools, or maybe as an insect repellent. And they engraved the ochre with symbols, something completely new on the planet Earth. Art. Not to be eaten, not to provide shelter, but to symbolize something. Or just to be. Looks a little bit like a ladder or a double helix. Whatever it was supposed to be, it's the earliest remnant we have of human culture. We had found a way to leave behind something distinctly human, a means to communicate, however enigmatically, to you and me, 100,000 years away. A great power was discovered here in Blombos Cave. At 25 cosmic seconds to midnight, between 10 and 12,000 years ago, humans discovered another great power. Instead of foraging for food, we learned how to grow it in the earth. This changed everything. Our ancestors did something else they had never done before. They invented new tools, technology, to plant and pull food out of the earth. They settled down and moved indoors. Our relationship to nature and to one another would never be the same. This agricultural revolution, the domestication of plants and animals, is the mother of all revolutions, because all others trace back to it. Its consequences reach far beyond even our own moment in time. Like most revolutions, this one brought change that was both great and horrifying. There was a new concept in the world: home. a specific place on the planet where your ancestors and you were born and lived. And over time, these settlements grew larger until about 20 cosmic seconds ago, or around 7,000 BCE. Welcome to Çatalhöyük, a community on the Anatolian plain. It's about 9,000 years ago, and everyone has settled in for the evening. Tonight, roughly the same number of people who once populated all of Africa are living together in this proto-city. The city is such a new idea, they haven't invented the street yet, or the window. So the only way you can get into your apartment is to walk along the rooftops till you arrive at the opening to your dwelling. Çatalhöyük lacked something much more significant than streets and windows. There is no palace here. The bitter price that the invention of agriculture cost human society had yet to be paid. Here, there was no dominance of the few over the many. There was no 1% attaining lavish wealth while most everyone else merely subsisted. Forensic analysis of the women, men, and children who lived here show a remarkable similarity in diet. They still cherished the hunter-gatherer ethos of sharing. Çatalhöyük was egalitarian. The weakest ate the same food that the strongest did, and everyone lived in the same kind of home. But man, it was anything but drab. Come on, I'll show you. This was a typical apartment in one of the first cities, Çatalhöyük, in what is now Turkey, as it looked about 9,000 years ago. They were a lot like us. This bit of volcanic glass, called obsidian, made an excellent mirror. If we could only find a way to see all the things that were once reflected here. This apartment was home for an extended family of 7 to 10 people. Every apartment had a similar floor plan. Bedroom, living room, kitchen, plastered auroch head. The people of Çatalhöyük had a passion for decorating. Apartments were richly appointed with the teeth and bones and skins of animals. The ochre that our ancestors picked up in Africa about 100,000 years before was now the medium of choice for the interior decorators of Çatalhöyük. And the red ochre had yet another profound application. They used it to create an entirely new art form, the map. For the first time ever, humans created a two-dimensional representation of their location in space and time. This is where my home is in relation to the volcano. And with a few magical strokes, the artist sent a message across 9,000 years. I was here when the volcano awakened. The experiment at Çatalhöyük was a success, and within a few thousand years, there were cities everywhere. When different kinds of people congregate in a single place, ideas are exchanged and new possibilities arise. The city is a kind of brain, creating and processing new ideas. Here, in the city of Amsterdam in the 17th century, citizens of the old and new worlds mingled as they never had before, and there was an unprecedented freedom of thought. These conditions produced a golden age of science and art. In Italy, Giordano Bruno had proclaimed the existence of other worlds. For this, he had been made to suffer. But a mere 50 years later, in Holland, the astronomer Christian Huygens, who held the same belief, was showered with honors. Light was the central theme of the age. The enlightenment of human curiosity set free, and the light shed by Europe's first look at the once hidden realms of the planet. The light that permeated the paintings of the time, particularly the work of Vermeer, and light as an object of scientific inquiry. For generations, textile merchants had used a lens to examine the thread count of finely stitched fabrics. In the Amsterdam of that time, there lived 3 men whose passion for light inspired them to use that ancient device in a completely new way. They aimed the textile merchant's lens at objects no one had ever thought to examine closely before. It became a window, an aperture for finding and exploring new worlds. Antony von Leeuwenhoek used a single lens to reveal the teeming microcosm in a drop of water. His friend, Christian Huygens, used 2 lenses to bring the stars, planets, and moons close enough to reveal their features. Huygens became the first to see that Saturn's rings did not touch the planet, and the first to understand what they really were. He also discovered Saturn's largest moon, Titan. Huygens, like Bruno, believed that the stars were other suns, orbited by their own systems of planets and moons. But why was there no hint of those other worlds and their living things in the sacred books? Whatever disquiet this contradiction may have stirred in the hearts and minds of the leaders of the Enlightenment, there was only one man who dared to address it head-on. He was another wizard of light. Baruch Spinoza had been a member of the Jewish congregation of Amsterdam through his teenage years. But in his early 20s, he began to speak publicly of a new vision of God. Spinoza's God was the physical laws of the universe. His sacred text, the Book of Nature. The Jews of Amsterdam were mostly refugees from the vicious inquisitions in Spain and Portugal, where so many of them had been tortured and murdered. Amsterdam had offered the Jews a refuge, and they must have seen Spinoza's radical ideas as a threat to their hard-won security in Holland. They excommunicated the young rebel and decreed that he must be forever shunned. Spinoza accepted their punishment with dignity, but without a trace of submission. He moved nearby to The Hague, where he went even further, daring to write that the Bible was not dictated by God, but written by human beings. Spinoza wrote, "Do not look for God in miracles. Miracles are violations of the laws of nature. God is best apprehended in the study of those laws." No one had ever said these things aloud before. Spinoza knew that he was testing the limits of free thought, even for Holland. To him, an official state religion was more than spiritual coercion of the individual. Spinoza regarded the miraculous events of the major religious traditions as organized superstition. In his view, magical thinking posed a danger to the future citizens of a rational, free society. There could be no such thing as democracy without the separation of church and state. He wrote a book that introduced the ideas at the heart of the American and many another revolution. Then, as now, there were those who were threatened by this view of God. Spinoza continued to write and speak about his revolutionary view of God, always wearing the slashed cape as a badge of honor. He died at 44, possibly from inhaling particles of dust during his years of grinding lenses for microscopes and telescopes. 250 years later, another man with a passion for light made a pilgrimage to the humble workroom that had been preserved as a testament to the vast influence of Spinoza's philosophy. This man, world famous for finding a new law of nature, was often asked if he believed in God. Albert Einstein replied, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the harmony of all that exists." Our understanding of nature's laws has advanced far beyond Spinoza's and even Einstein's wildest dreams. But there is one law of nature we cannot seem to grasp. Inscribed in the Book of Nature is a parable about an ancient alliance between two kingdoms and those who would tear it apart. Long ago, there were two kingdoms. An alliance was formed between them, one that would bring them both riches beyond measure. A partnership lasting more than 100 million years. And then, a new kind of being evolved in one of the two kingdoms. Its descendants plundered the riches and violated the alliance. In their arrogance, they became a mortal danger to both kingdoms and to themselves. This parable is true. It's the story of two of the half-dozen realms of life on Earth, the plant and animal kingdoms. It's not easy being green. Sex is challenging when you're stuck in one place. There's no dating. You just sit there and cast your seed to the winds. Literally. You just wait for the wind to blow. If you get lucky, some of your pollen will be carried away and land on the sexual reproductive part of another plant. The plants play this hit-or-miss game of chance for a couple of 100 million years until insects evolve to play Cupid. What resulted was one of the great co-evolution marriages in the history of life. The insect would visit a flower for a dinner of protein-rich pollen. Inevitably, some of the pollen would stick to the body of the insect. The insect would visit another flower, bringing along the leftovers on its body. That pollen fertilized the next flower, allowing it to reproduce. It was a win-win deal for both the flowers and the insects, causing a series of delightful evolutionary developments. A new plant arose that produced sugary nectar in addition to the pollen. Now, the insects came not just for their basic meal of pollen, but also for dessert. The insects got chubbier, evolved furry bodies and even little pouches on their legs to snag more pollen on their daily rounds of the flowers. Now, there were bees. This was a bonus for yet another species of the animal kingdom. Us. We are indebted to the bees and their fellow pollinators for something even more vital to our survival. Every third bite of food you take, and this is even true for those of us who are omnivores, was made possible by them. 35% of the world's crops depend on their cooperation. The plants eat starlight, and we and the animals, we eat plants. And they don't just increase the quantity of available food, we owe them for much of the biodiversity that has made our food supply so dependable. But we're working them to death. And for the first time ever, many kinds of bees are on the endangered species list. I think you know where this is headed. blessing and the curse of the invention of agriculture has brought us here, to the halls of extinction. A memorial to all the living things lost in the mass extinction events in Earth's history. It's a monument to the broken branches on the tree of life. 5 times in the history of life, cataclysmic geological and astronomical events have threatened to extinguish life itself. The 6th one is different. The last time we were here together, this hallway had no name. Why? Because back then, a scientific consensus had yet to be reached that we were in the midst of a mass extinction event. Including our own